Okay. Nolan Wells update. A mysterious letter surfaces online, and TikTok users are exposing more. Now that's the title, but what's underneath it is so much deeper than a headline, because what I'm about to walk you through is not just an update, it's a full breakdown. The phone call that doesn't add up, the GPS data that tells a different story, a body with missing evidence, wiped phones, sealed autopsy results, legal subpoenas flying in every direction, and a letter with no name on it showing up at a grieving mother's door. This is not surface level. We're going all the way in. Every piece of evidence, every contradiction, every unanswered question, point by point. So if you're here for the full picture, you're in the right place. But I need you to stay with me, because this case has layers, and every single one of them matters. Now, before we get to any of that, there's a phone call. And that phone call is where this whole story breaks open. Now watch this.
Here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and there's this odd letter. It looks like a journal entry that just hit the internet. Let me know what you guys think. It says July 4th, we go to the party, the island. We had alcohol. I may have drank half, if not a whole seltzer throughout the entire time. Was worried about returning for his second season, and he didn't want to ruin his chances. Cell service sucks here. Imagine something happening to you and not being able to call out for help. Nolan side-eyes and dismisses the comment. Nolan snaps a photo or a video of scenery or something. Wyatt had been sniffing the bug shug all morning. Wyatt tries to grab his phone and has to put it, and Nolan jerks his phone because this feels like what would lead to Nolan's death later. Approximately 12 hours later, Nolan was already hanging on an inkling he shouldn't go to the pool party. Him and Wyatt have had some animosity for a while because Nolan was back and forgave easily and didn't hold grudges. He was the peaceful friend, the conflict solver in most of his social group. He had several, maybe 3 friends, grumps. I can't read the rest of that. Nolan was only put on the boat to be transferred back to the island around 3 to 5 a.m. July 6th. That's why he wasn't found initially on the island. He was stored somewhere cool and dark to keep from decompositioning a minute, but it was summer. He already started to have a hint of smell permeating the shaded area. It's an area of property him and his friends hiked or hung around in, and yes, it's one of his friends' properties. Somebody got a farm or hiking trail, maybe both. Somebody cried, somebody is scared to speak, somebody was threatened. All of them are being haunted. Nolan decided to unfriend this group, and they couldn't accept it, the ultimate motive. Again, it's hard to read this letter. The writing kind of looks that of a female. I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
Because the phone call was just one piece. The boat itself was keeping a record the entire time. See, most people don't think about this, but modern boats have GPS tracking, Garmin systems that log every move, every turn, every stop, time stamped, location stamped. And the data from that boat was pulled from official documents, Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. This isn't speculation. This isn't TikTok. This is the boat telling on itself. So let's walk through it, step by step, timestamp by timestamp. And I want you to pay attention, because by the end of this, you're going to have questions, and nobody has answered them yet. 9:56 a.m. The boat leaves the southern shore of Mississippi. That's the starting point. A group of friends heading out for the 4th. Everything's normal. 11:14 a.m. The boat arrives at the western tip of Horn Island. That's about an hour and 18 minutes on the water. They're on the island now. The day begins. Now fast forward. 3 p.m. That is the last confirmed time anyone says they saw Nolan Wells on that island. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And here's where it matters. The boat doesn't leave until 4:31. We covered that in the last chapter. But think about what that means. 3 p.m. to 4:31. That's roughly 90 minutes. An hour and a half. On an island with no way to call anyone. No way to reach anyone. No outside contact. 90 minutes. What happened in that window? Because as of right now, nobody has publicly explained it. Not the friends, not their attorneys, not law enforcement. 90 minutes of silence. Okay, now here's where the GPS gets really interesting. Because when that boat left Horn Island, it didn't just go straight home. And this is the part most people miss. 4:31 p.m., boat departs Horn Island, heads back toward the mainland. It arrives at the original departure dock. Okay, so far that tracks. They left from there, they came back there, normal. But then, the boat moves again. 5:52 p.m., the boat travels into Fort Bayou. Fort Bayou. That's not the dock they launched from. That's a different location. And the boat goes there, after returning to shore, after supposedly almost sinking. Then at 6:06 p.m., the boat returns to the original departure dock. So it went out, came back, went to Fort Bayou, came back again, and it's not done. 7:19 p.m., the boat moves again. This time to the Fort Bayou boat launch. A second trip to Fort Bayou in the same evening. And then after 7:19, the GPS shows the boat traveling over land, not on water. Over land, presumably loaded onto a trailer, towed by a vehicle, to a private residence in Biloxi, Mississippi, the home of the boat's owners. Now I need you to sit with that for a second. Because remember what started all of this. That sea tow call. A panicked teenager saying the boat was sinking. The bilge pump failed. They were going down. But here's a boat that supposedly was taking on water, making multiple additional trips on the water after it got back to the dock, 2 separate stops in Fort Bayou over a span of about 2 hours, and then a calm trip over land to a private residence. If your boat is sinking, if your bilge pump is broken, if you're panicked enough to call for emergency towing, do you then take that same boat back out on the water? Twice? To a location that isn't your launch point? What was at Fort Bayou? What required 2 trips? What was on that boat that needed to go somewhere else before it went home? Nobody has answered that. Okay, now let me bring in something else. Because there's a person in this story whose public statement matters here. Her name is Ashley Cole. She's been identified as a judge, and she is the mother of one of the friends on that boat. She made a public statement. She said her son last saw Nolan around 3 p.m. She said the group left around 4:30 when the boat started taking on water, and she said Nolan made the decision to stay. His choice. He wanted to stay on the island. He'd come back with another group. Okay? But here's the thing. No one has publicly identified the girl Nolan allegedly met on that island. No name. No confirmation. No one has come forward. And the other group, the group Nolan was supposedly going to ride back with, nobody has named them either. No boat, no captain, no passengers, nothing. So we have a story that says Nolan stayed behind willingly, met someone, had a plan to get home, but there's no evidence of the girl, no evidence of the other group, and no explanation for why someone told a dispatcher everyone was accounted for. And then on top of all that, the GPS shows a boat that should have been out of commission, making unexplained stops for 2 more hours. I want to be fair here. There could be explanations. Maybe the boat was being moved for repairs. Maybe Fort Bayou had a purpose we don't know about. Maybe there's a completely reasonable answer for every single one of these stops. But right now, those answers don't exist publicly. And the GPS data comes from official records, not social media, not theories. Official documents from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. So let's just lay it out clean. The friends say the boat was failing. The GPS says the boat kept moving. The friends say Nolan stayed by choice. No one can confirm who he stayed with. The friends say he had a way home. No one can identify that way home. And in between all of it, there are 90 minutes on that island that no one has accounted for. The GPS tells you where that boat went. Every turn, every stop, every timestamp. But it doesn't tell you what was on that boat or what wasn't. The body does. And the body has its own story to tell. So we've got a phone call that doesn't add up. We've got GPS data that raises more questions. But there's one thing in this case that doesn't lie, doesn't forget details, doesn't change its story. The body. And what it was telling investigators should concern everyone following this case. Let's get into it. July 6th, 2 days after the boat trip. Search teams locate Nolan Wells. He's in the water, face down, approximately 10 miles south of the Mississippi mainland, near Horn Island, the same island his friends left him on. Now, because the body had been in the water for roughly 48 hours, visual identification wasn't possible. They had to use dental records to confirm it was him. Dental records for an 18-year-old kid. Now here's where this gets clinical, and I'm going to walk through this carefully because the forensic details in this case are where the biggest questions live. The state of Mississippi conducted the first autopsy. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. That's standard procedure. They examined the body. They completed their report. And then they sealed it. Every finding, every result, every conclusion, sealed, locked away until a grand jury can review it. The Jackson County District Attorney confirmed this. No timeline was given for when that grand jury would convene. So as of right now, we do not know what the state's autopsy concluded. But the family wasn't waiting. They brought in their own expert, an independent medical examiner, Dr. Mitchell, commissioned by the family and their legal team to conduct a second autopsy. And what Dr. Mitchell found raised serious concerns. Let's start with the official conclusion. Dr. Mitchell's ruling on cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. Pending further investigation. Now that word matters. Undetermined. He didn't say accidental. He didn't say natural causes. 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 And more importantly, he could not rule out foul play. Let that land. An independent medical examiner looked at this body and said, I cannot tell you this was an accident. Now here's what he did find. Red discoloration in the soft tissue on the back of Nolan's head. Red discoloration on the back of the head. Now what does that mean? Because in forensic pathology, that finding can point in several directions, and each direction leads somewhere very different. Option 1, decomposition. When a body is in water for 2 days, the muscle tissue begins to break down. That breakdown can cause discoloration. It's a normal part of what happens after death in a marine environment. Possible, documented, common in water recoveries. Option 2, lividity. That's when blood pools in the body after death. Gravity pulls it downward. If Nolan was face down in the water, blood could settle toward the back of the head, creating that red discoloration. Also possible, also documented. Option 3, blunt force injury. A strike to the back of the head or the neck, which would also present as red discoloration in soft tissue. 3 possible explanations. 1 is natural decomposition. 1 is post-mortem blood pooling. And 1 is a physical injury. Dr. Mitchell could not determine which one it was. Now you might be asking, why couldn't he narrow it down? He's an experienced forensic pathologist. He had the body. Why couldn't he give a definitive answer? And this is the part of this case that stops people cold. Because Dr. Mitchell didn't have the full body, when the body was transferred to him for the independent examination, key parts were missing, not damaged, not decomposed beyond use. Missing, as in not sent. Specifically, the interior neck structures, the hyoid bone, and the trachea. Those parts were retained, held back, by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. They conducted the first autopsy. They removed those structures, and they did not send them with the rest of the body. Now, I need you to understand why that matters, because these aren't random bones. These aren't insignificant pieces of anatomy. The hyoid bone is a small horseshoe-shaped bone in the neck. In forensic investigations, it is one of the most critical indicators of whether someone suffered a neck injury. A fracture of the hyoid bone can indicate compression of the neck. It is one of the first things a medical examiner checks in any suspicious death. The trachea, the windpipe. Damage to the trachea can indicate pressure or trauma to the throat. These two structures together are the definitive evidence for confirming or ruling out a neck injury, and Dr. Mitchell didn't have them. So when he examined the body, he could see the red discoloration on the head, he could document it, he could photograph it, but he could not determine whether it extended to the neck, whether there was a fracture, whether there was trauma to the throat, because the parts that would tell him were sitting in a state lab somewhere. And here's what Dr. Mitchell said about that. In his professional opinion, if he were conducting an autopsy for an investigation, the only reason he would hold back those bones would be because of neck fractures. Let me say that one more time. The only reason he could think of to withhold those specific structures from a second examination would be the presence of fractures. Now, I'm not drawing a conclusion here. Dr. Mitchell didn't say there were fractures. He said the absence of those bones prevented him from ruling it out. And the only reason he'd seen bones withheld before was when fractures were present. That is a factual statement from a forensic professional about what was missing from his exam table. Make of it what you will. The independent medical examiner was handed an incomplete body. The exact bones that could confirm a neck injury were not there. And the official autopsy that has those answers is sealed behind a grand jury wall. If this case matters to you, and it should, subscribe right now, because this investigation is still moving. New developments are coming. Grand jury proceedings will happen. And when they do, we'll be breaking it down right here. Every update, every finding, right here on DAV Crime Records. So where are we right now? The state has its autopsy, sealed. The family has their autopsy, incomplete. And somewhere between those two reports is the answer to what happened to Nolan Wells. But the body wasn't the only evidence the family went after. Because while the medical examiner was documenting what he could The family's attorneys were filing subpoenas, sending legal letters, and demanding answers from the people who were on that boat and from the tech companies that stored their data. The body raised questions. The autopsy couldn't answer all of them, but the phones might, and the family's legal team came in swinging. Here's something worth understanding. In cases like this, the investigation has two tracks running at once. Law enforcement works their side, and the family works theirs. By the time the medical examiner filed his findings, the family's legal team was already moving, fast, strategically, and they started with the phones. When Nolan's phone was returned to his mother, Christine Wansley, she went through it, the way any mother would, looking for something, anything, that might tell her what happened to her son. And here's what she found. Nothing. Not a single photo. Not a single video on either of his two Snapchat accounts. Two Snapchat accounts. 4th of July. A boat trip with friends. An 18-year-old on a holiday weekend. And there is not one image on either account. Christine Wansley said publicly, she found this suspicious. She believes something was removed from that device. Now, one of the friends responded to that. He said he had no knowledge of anything being deleted. He said nobody touched the phone until it was moved from the boat to a truck. Okay, so the phone goes from the boat to a truck. Nobody touches it. And when it gets back to the family, both Snapchat accounts are empty. That's the situation. Draw your own conclusions, but understand what normal looks like. A teenager, a holiday, friends on a boat, two active Snapchat accounts in 2025. No photos, no videos, nothing. That is not normal. So the family's legal team made a decision. If the data is gone from the phone, maybe it still exists somewhere else. In a server, in a cloud backup, in a company's database. They started filing subpoenas, court orders directing companies to hand over everything they have. 5 companies were subpoenaed: Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, Meta Platforms, and Life 360. What were they asking for? All subscriber information, full communication history, direct messages, photos and videos, GPS location data, everything, every message sent, every photo uploaded, every location logged. Now, most of those companies are obvious. Snapchat because the accounts were wiped. WhatsApp and Meta for direct messages. TikTok because of what was being posted publicly. But Life 360, that one is worth explaining. Because Life 360 is a location tracking app. Families use it to monitor where their kids are in real time. It logs location data continuously, independently of anything else. Here's why that's significant. We already know the boat's GPS was tracking movement all day. We walked through every timestamp in the last chapter, but if any of those teens or any of their parents had Life 360 active on their phones that day, there would be a second set of location data, independent of the boat, independent of what anyone says happened. That data would show you where those phones were, every hour, every minute, all day, on July 4th. It could confirm the existing timeline, or it could contradict it. Either way, the family's legal team wants it, and they filed the legal paperwork to get it. But subpoenas were just the first move, because on the day of Nolan Wells' funeral, something else got delivered. Spoliation letters sent by the family's attorneys to multiple individuals, including the friends who were on that boat, and their parents. Now, if you're not familiar with spoliation letters, here's what they are in plain terms. It's a legal document. It arrives at your door, and it says one thing clearly. We are expecting to sue you. Do not destroy anything. Not your phone, not your messages, not your photos, not your emails, not your camera footage, nothing. Your obligation to preserve evidence starts right now. The letters specifically demanded preservation of all materials related to Nolan's death, and they required recipients to suspend any automatic deletion or overwrite functions on every device they owned: phones, computers, cameras, everything. And these weren't short letters, 10 pages. Each one, 10 pages of legal demands sent on the day they buried Nolan Wells. 10 pages on the day of a funeral. That tells you exactly where the family's legal team believes this is going. Now let's shift gears, because while the legal machinery was moving, something else was happening. Something that has nothing to do with court filings, or subpoenas, or GPS data. Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother, received something in the mail at her home, an envelope, postmarked from Denver, Colorado, July 15th. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A photo of Christine and her husband, standing alongside civil rights attorney Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton. The photo had been defaced, dollar signs drawn on it, arrows marked across it. Whoever sent it found out where this family lives, went to the effort of printing and mailing it during an active investigation. In the weeks leading up to a funeral, Christine Wansley responded publicly. She said, "Whoever sent this to my home, may the good Lord have mercy on your soul. Bold enough to send this crap, but not bold enough to list your return address. No performance needed here, just facts." Someone tracked down a grieving mother's home address and sent her that. Now, I want to be clear about something. This case has generated threats on multiple sides. A man in suburban Chicago was arrested for making death threats targeting witnesses in the case, threatening witnesses, threatening law enforcement, and on the other side, the friends who were on that boat have reportedly received threats as well. Their attorneys have said publicly some of them cannot return to school. Some cannot even go home. Their families have been threatened. 2 of them were refused service at a local restaurant. The threats directed at witnesses in this case are a separate issue from what happened on that island. Online pressure and online rage do not determine guilt or innocence. That's what evidence and a grand jury are for. But the letter sent to Nolan's mother is in its own category, because whoever sent it knew where she lived and chose to use that information while she was preparing to bury her son. That letter came from somewhere. Denver, Colorado. No name, no return address, just a defaced photo and a point of view. Someone didn't want attached to their identity. So here's where we are heading into the final chapter. The legal team has filed subpoenas across 5 platforms. Spoliation letters have been delivered. The phones are under scrutiny. A threatening letter arrived at a grieving mother's home. And investigators have interviewed approximately 60 witnesses. The FBI is actively assisting with analysis of digital evidence. The machinery is moving on every level: legal, investigative, and online. The lawyers are moving. The subpoenas are filed. And somebody from Denver is sending letters to a grieving mother's house. And then there's TikTok. Millions of people watching, some getting it right, some getting it very wrong. And somewhere in the noise is a question nobody has answered yet. Let me ask you something. What happens when millions of people decide they're going to solve a case before law enforcement does? You get 2 things at once: breakthroughs and chaos. And in this case, you got both. Within days of Nolan Wells' disappearance, this case went viral. TikTok became a second investigation. Tens of thousands of users pulling apart every photo, every public statement, every piece of GPS data they could find, frame by frame, word by word, and some of them were asking the right questions before anyone else did. The contradictions in the CTO call were flagged on social media before mainstream news picked them up. The GPS timeline discrepancies were first broken down and popularized by TikTok creators. And the missing data on Nolan's phone was being questioned publicly online before the family's attorneys filed a single subpoena. That matters, because in a case where official information is sealed and law enforcement has released very little, the public pressure created by those questions forced this story into the national conversation. Without that pressure, there's a real question of whether this case would have gotten the attention it has. But here's the other side, and this part matters just as much. Not everything TikTok produced was real. Some of it was flat out wrong, and the wrong stuff spread just as fast as the right stuff. AI-generated images were posted as evidence, fabricated photos, shared thousands of times. Some of them depicted people who looked nothing like anyone in this case. Didn't matter. They went viral anyway. Real individuals were falsely identified, tagged by name, accused publicly, without a shred of verified evidence. Claims about political conspiracies circulated widely. Manipulated photographs were presented as proof, and some accounts posted completely fabricated AI video under the banner of exposing the truth. The internet isn't the investigation, but sometimes it asks the right questions. The problem is, it asks them loudly, and loud doesn't always mean accurate. So with all of that noise surrounding this case, let's cut through it and talk about what the actual theories are. Because there are four, and each one lines up differently with the evidence we've walked through. Theory 1, accidental death with a cover-up. Under this theory, Nolan died as a result of an accident, a fall, a confrontation that went wrong, or drowning, and the people who were there panicked. Instead of calling for help, they made a decision to leave and built a story around it afterward. This theory doesn't require premeditation. It doesn't require planning, just fear, and a bad decision made fast. Under this version of events, the contradictions we've seen would make sense. The call where everyone is accounted for, the boat making unexplained stops, the empty phone, all of it tracks with people trying to manage a situation they didn't plan for. Theory 2, intentional harm. This theory goes further. Online investigators have raised claims about a conflict between Nolan and at least one member of the group. Some allege it was connected to Nolan photographing drug use on the island. Others point to an interpersonal dispute. That had been building before the trip. If a conflict escalated on that island and resulted in harm, the behavior afterward would look identical to Theory 1. Same cover story. Same contradictions, different intent. Now I need to be clear. These claims are unverified. No law enforcement source has confirmed any of them. They come from online investigators, not official channels. Theory 3, broader involvement. Some theories suggest that more people than just the group on the boat knew what happened, either on the island or afterward, and there are reasons people believe this. The spoliation letters weren't just sent to the friends, they were sent to their parents too. The legal team cast a wide net, which suggests they believe the circle of knowledge may extend beyond 4 people on a boat. Theory 4, institutional protection. This is the most contested theory. Claims have circulated that local political connections and law enforcement relationships are shielding those involved from accountability. The fact that one of the friends on that boat has a parent who is a judge has been noted publicly and repeatedly. But I need to state this directly. These are allegations, not established facts. The FBI is involved in this case. The district attorney has publicly committed to presenting findings to a grand jury. These are not the actions of an institution that has shut this case down. Whether that process moves fast enough is a different question. So where does this investigation actually stand? Right now, today, the official autopsy is complete, sealed, waiting for a grand jury. The independent autopsy came back undetermined, with missing structures and unanswered questions. Subpoenas are filed across 5 tech platforms. And the district attorney has said publicly, "We are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands. No one has been charged. The case is open, the case is active, and a grand jury will ultimately decide whether charges are warranted." So let's end where the evidence ends, with the questions that are still open. One at a time. If Nolan chose to stay on that island, why did the caller tell a dispatcher everyone was on board? If the boat was truly sinking, why did it make multiple stops across 2 hours after returning to the mainland? If nothing was deleted from that phone, why are both Snapchat accounts empty? If this was a straightforward accident, why were the neck structures withheld from the independent autopsy? And who sent that letter to a grieving mother's home? What did they know that made them feel the need to send it? An 18-year-old kid, wide receiver. Freshman year ahead of him, he went to an island. He didn't come back. And right now, everything that could tell us why is sitting in a sealed room, waiting for a grand jury. We don't know what happened to Nolan Wells. Nobody outside that investigation does. But we know enough to know that this isn't over. And when it moves, we'll be here. Subscribe to DAV Crime Records. Because when this grand jury makes a decision, and they will, you need to already be here. Don't find out about it from someone else.